The women who leave anti-abortion picket lines to get abortions. A few days before the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade last month, a woman who described herself as an anti-abortion activist showed up in the waiting room of Dr. Marissa Lapidus, a family medicine doctor who performs a procedure in Atlanta. But she wasn't there to protest. She had an appointment. She talked about being in marches and said she had spent a lot of time volunteering in crisis pregnancy centers, showing patients the ultrasound image and explaining what happens. Lapidus, a fellow with a group Physicians for Reproductive Health, told the Daily Beast. She said she had been anti-abortion her whole life and that her whole family was like her, and yet she was so appreciative of the care she had received from us. She literally was like, I'm so grateful that I'm able to make this choice for myself. Lapidus' experience is remarkable in part because she resides in a state with a looming ban on the procedure after 6 weeks. Although the law has so far been held up in court, you sometimes have anti-people who are like, promise me no one's going to find out, my boss cannot know, because they work in the Republican legislature or something, which has happened. But this patient was so appreciative. So let's jump down here for a moment. All of us who do abortions see patients cry regularly who tell us, I am not pro-choice, but I just can't continue this pregnancy, said Dr. Sarah Prager, a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Washington. We have seen people coming into the clinic off the protester lines to get their abortions, then return to protesting outside the clinic. And to be clear, she added, these are not people who turn anti-choice after having an abortion, but who simply access this essential service when they need it, in spite of their personal beliefs about abortion in general. According to Prager, the phenomenon is so common that abortion providers have a name for it, the me exception. We in the movement often say people believe abortion should be legal in cases of rape, incest, and me, meaning whatever reason is relevant for that person, she said. And yet, she noted, of the many surveys describing how Americans view abortion, virtually none reflect that reality. Anti-choice people have no incentive to be honest about whether or not they have had an abortion. And we as physicians would never leak a story about a patient, she continued. Doing so is prohibited under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, the federal law that protects confidential health information. Still, health professionals are permitted to discuss cases in general terms. And when asked about patients with anti-choice views this past week, abortion providers had no shortage of sometimes incredible tales about activists deeming themselves an exception to the rule. Dr. Portia Jones, a family medicine physician in Washington, recalled a time a woman whose sister-in-law was the president of a big Right to Life organization had asked to be snuck in the back door of the clinic where she was working in Philadelphia. Then there was the picketer who brought her daughter in for a procedure and was back on the picket line the next week, she recalled. On another occasion, a woman came in and declared to a full waiting room that they were all sinners and should leave immediately, she said. When I drew her aside, I found out she was there for an abortion too, Jones told the Daily Beast. Jones and other abortion providers attributed many such instances to a sense of exceptionalism on the part of patients who decide their situation entitles them to do what they believe other women should legally be unable to. I've done a lot of options counseling with patients who had to do some pretty creative moral jujitsu to justify their behavior to themselves, she added. But our role is to give people information, to create a space for them where they can make decisions and support them in the process. So these people are basically hypocrites, you see. This is what this comes down to. I'm going to put a link in this article for anyone who wants to read it. And in the comments here, some people have their own take on it and their own personal comments about people who are hypocrites. Yeah, people they know, people in their family who are anti-abortion, and people in their family went out and get an abortion because the person was from the wrong neighborhood with a 15-year-old girl.